punishment, move on. And it didn't do them much favours, did it?
Yeah,
in that year. I
suppose the key word there from Wakey White is cheating, isn't it? And it's debatable whether it was cheating. I'm sure most people feel like it was. I'm going to buy the company line, as it were, I suppose, as a Wigan fan, but I'm going to buy that it was an administrative error. I do know for an absolute fact from my dealings with the club that over the last 2 years or so there's been a huge overhaul of background admin functions and staff who are involved with the club at all different levels, in the non-playing side of things.
Yeah.
So this talking about, a new admin team dealing with the accountancy is not something that surprises me that that went on.
And they did change. The RFL did. I think if we recall back, probably about 3 years ago, the RFL did appoint a forensic accountant to go to be the salary cap manager. So they were looking for someone with deep level accountants. So that tells me that it's not something that's easy to get right.
And this isn't. We'll talk more about kind of where it fits into difference of other things then, and then I'll talk about like what type of breach it maybe is. So Fatboy Rob says the only shock is that people are shocked, whether it be postponing a match without the RFL's consent or bending the salary cap rules. They clearly think the rules don't apply to them. Wigan have previous for this, and the fact that they are appealing says it all. The defence that they forgot agent fees could count towards the cap is laughable. The other 11 clubs managed to account for the fees. The points deduction isn't a punishment at all. Salford got 6 points for the first offence, and Keighley and Bradford got 12 points for trying to save their clubs! Should have been at least 6, with a reduction in their cap this season. I don't want to get bogged down, Tim, in the Bradford Keighley 12 points deduction matter.
It's not comparable. It's not comparable.
It's like talking about Jared Samet getting banned for 2 matches for touching the referee versus another player getting banned for 2 matches for
or another match getting banned for
foul,
or someone getting
put someone out for
banned for 5 matches for homophobic abuse.
They're all very different. But the Salford getting 6 points on their first offence, whereas Wigan as a club have had previous offences. Do you think that comment is fair?
Well, I think it comes down to willful intent, doesn't it? If as I read it, that the Wigan is a genuine mistake, then I think 2 points in the scale of it probably works out. 6 points was because that was a deliberate. I mean, you couldn't have made it more blatant. Look, I'm cheating the salary cap. No. So I don't really think that you can compare them in that way, because I think it's proportionate compared to the scale of the crime.
On his piece on the BBC Sport website, the Rugby League correspondent Dave Wood said, this is more a technical breach rather than a case of a club breaking the rules to gain an advantage. And I think this is where it's a bit of a key difference in that regard to maybe the Salford breach, for example. Now, one of the things that might come up out of this, and Phil's already mentioned it, is about we've got a live cap. So how's this taken so long to come out? What I would say is this appears to me to have been around the administrative extras around how you manage your playing squad rather than payments to players itself. So the live cap and that sort of management of that, obviously we don't know how well that functions, and it's questionable how well it functions, but when it was Salford's case, it was clear that there was attempts to conceal it by making these payments through Marwan Kukash's other companies. And
he'd been very blatant out on Twitter, and so that's kind of what he was doing. They hadn't tried hard to hide it, had they?
No. Whereas in this Wigan case, it's not about payments to players at all. It's about the agents' fees. My understanding is the agents' fees in relation to getting players' contracts sorted during the spell where Wigan were going through a big injury crisis in the middle of 2017, and were having to get certain players in and get their deals sorted and those sorts of things is my understanding of it. It's from that period where Wigan basically lost more games than they won in the middle period of the 2017 season. So yeah, that's what we're going to put forward as well as their sort of case. So from that regard, Salford's first offence was a different type of offence. Now, if you want to talk about why Wigan didn't get deducted 6 points back in 2006 or 2004, or why Bradford and St Helens back in the mid-2000s didn't get deducted by more points when they had breaches of the salary cap, that might be more in line with what Salford had done. That's a different conversation, but it does seem like Salford's was a much greater offence, even if it was a first offence. And what's the statute of limitations on these sorts of things? Wigan's last offence was way over 10 years ago now. Well, 12 years ago it was that it came to light. It was for a different administration and a different ownership structure. I know, like, breaching the rules has to be punished. That's what's happened. Is that not what's happened?
Yeah. And it's again, I think it comes down to intent. Was the intent there to conceal, deceive, and break the rule and smash the rule, or was it we broke the rule in the course of generally trying to do the right thing?
Yeah, there is from the Wigan statement. There's a bit of a question mark over how the process all played out, and one of the pieces that I've read today as well on the Wigan Today website, there's also suggestions that Wigan could have avoided any points deduction if they had admitted to the offence earlier, but Wigan feel that due process hadn't happened for them to be able to admit to the offence or agree the offence before the independent tribunal was launched. So it's really muddy, it's messy, but it sounds like there was a circumstance out there where Wigan could have got deducted no points for this. When it's been to the tribunal, they've been deducted 2 points. That seems like it's the tribunal maybe have weighed up other factors like Wigan as a club breaching the salary cap in the past. I'm keen. I know you were just interrupting there, Tim. So I'm going to read out 2 more for you and then let you have the floor a bit more again. Archie said, if Wigan had any brains, they would just take the fine and deduction and move on. Complaining that they've been caught cheating will only weaken their position. And Paul O'Brien said, I think it's a bit of a joke that it takes so long after the event to administer the punishment.
It's only the next financial year effectively, so I don't really think that's, and to be honest, I'm not surprised it takes long with this sort of thing, because it just looking from the outside, just looking even at the Wigan statement, it seems damn complicated. I don't think you couldn't work this out of a number of spreadsheets and accounting systems and whatever, so it's not like you could expect people to be able to get this right 100% of the time necessarily, because it is complicated.
It's clear, and I bet it's come out of information that Wigan have provided to the RFL that has been audited, and they've spotted these a number of payments ranging up to maybe £3,000 in total. I think the 6 payments maximum were ish, is my understanding, and so that would mean that Wigan haven't tried to hide this information. It's just they haven't added it to the salary cap calculations correctly when they should have done.
It's proportionality as well. That if you look at according to the Wigan statement, the breach was 0.8% over.
Yes.
Is that really worth the amount of time that even we're giving it?
It's a big story. People wanted to get in touch about it, Tim. Right, we've got one other view, which kind of goes off in a different direction, but it's totally worth covering, and it's been sent in, so we want to give everyone their platform. Genghis Campbell says, salary cap, schmallery cap. Clubs should be able to pay what their owners can afford, or at least increase it to NRL levels. Anything else just encourages mediocrity. I'm willing to compromise and say you have to have a reserve side to get an extra tranche of salary cap, but if the Rugby League people seriously want to break out of this bubble I keep hearing about in a good way, to do it would be to steal some rugby union internationals. Now, they wouldn't count against the cap if they haven't played Rugby League before, so that's one way to get around it legally. I
suppose my counter view to that is always one of sustainability. that where is that money coming from? We're not a game that's got money to throw at simple things like match officials development or development outside of heartland areas and development officers. So why would we, if money was theoretically available, why would we just be ploughing it into players' back pockets?
And is one shining example of that what happened to Lee Centurions when Derek Beaumont pulled out? They had to renegotiate all their players' deals and basically forced out any players who were on full-time contracts. So, and that was because the club couldn't afford to pay what Derek Beaumont could afford to pay. But it is an interesting point. Yeah, if we did bring in some rugby union internationals, is it for the first year they don't count at all on the cap, and then
it's 50%, I think. Yeah.
For the rest of their contract, is it, or for the next year, or so? Anyway, something like that. You can give them a go. That's why Wigan brought Andy Powell over, and it failed spectacularly.
Although that whole thing when his suit went on eBay was hilarious. So for that alone, it was worth it.
So I suppose. We've covered quite a bit of ground there. The overall view from my point as a Wigan fan is I have some sympathy with what Archie says there about taking the fine and the deduction and moving on. It does seem very strange that the process has got to where it is so far. And yeah, it might just be that, and the next independent tribunal might look negatively on the fact that we are admitting that we missed the 6 payments of £14,700. However, Wigan are still challenging the points deduction in relation to it. But why, if they've admitted it, should they not accept the verdict? I suppose is there, get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, there was mention of flights in there as well, so it would just be quite.
My understanding, because those flights, the part about flights has started to drop off. The reports. So. I
mean, it'd just be funny if it was all because of Frank Paul Nuasala, for example. If that was the reason that you ended up tipping over, was flying him around.
I'd love it if it was flying England players to play against Samoa or something in the mid-season international. But the flight stuff seems to have dropped off, so I think that might be the payment that Wigan was still saying actually doesn't count as a salary cap, like a salary cap eligible payment, and it's these agent fees now that seem to be dominating the part of it. So yes, Wigan should be punished because they've gone over the amount. They've made an administrative error, and in a salary cap sport you have to be punished for your administrative error. We don't know enough about the verdict, in my view, to know if the 2 points was because of previous offences rather than because of this offence, because the fine is very low, as Phil was saying, in relation to apparent severity of the offence. You would expect a much higher fine, like we've seen in every other case. So that's where the question mark comes from me, but I'd be happy to just move on from this personally and get back to the excitement of the season.
I think that's exactly right. I think we've got the start of the season tomorrow, or today, or yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this, or 2 weeks ago, last Thursday. And I think it's going to be overshadowed very quickly as soon as we see. And to be honest, it could all not matter by tomorrow night, because Wigan could have regained those 2 points and moved back to 0.
Well, yeah. And then if they appeal and get the 2 points back, then they'll be on 2 points. But we will see. We will see. So I think people will be disappointed, Tim, that you've not been more anti-Wigan in your sentiments. I just pulled on whichever neutral I could get, so it's a shame that I got a pragmatic one rather than a fired up one.
This is probably more from having had to deal with sports administration. I know how damn complicated it can be, and how stupid some of the procedures, rules, and things you have to go through are. So I kind of, when I read it in detail, and my first reaction, as I said, was, "Oh, we're going to cheating again." But then when you actually read the Wigan statement and even the verdict, you think, well, it's just some accountants have made a boo-boo.
Well, that's as it appears, and in this realm that we're operating in, you shouldn't be making those, and we're going to have been punished for it.
But it's all part of the anti-Wigan conspiracy that we've got going on now, because they missed out on the World Cup venues, and now this.